Welcome back to Soulful Tales. Some stories aren't loud. They don't shout or beg for attention. They're the quiet ones. The ones tucked away in dusty corners of our hearts. The ones that only come back when everything else goes silent. Today I want to tell you a story. Not about war, not about miracles, but about something far more ordinary and perhaps far more difficult. It's a story about brothers, about growing up together and then growing apart, about words left unsaid, calls left unanswered, and moments that never came back. But more than anything, it's a story about remembering and forgiving when no one asks to be forgiven. If this story finds its way into your memory, let it stay for a while. And if you've ever lost someone while they were still alive, this one is for you. You're listening to Soulful Tales. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this story with someone you've been meaning to call. Now, let's begin. They used to call us the Double Take Boys. We were born 22 months apart, but we looked so alike that strangers often thought we were twins. Same dark eyes, same wild hair that never stayed combed, same habit of talking with our hands and running too fast down the school hallway. He was louder than me, braver too. If I climbed halfway up the tree, he'd be at the top, grinning like he owned the sky. If I cried when I scraped my knee, he rolled his eyes, handed me a Band-Aid, and told me to man up. But he also gave me the bigger slice of cake when no one was looking. He was my first partner in crime, my co-architect of forts made from couch cushions, our bunk bed the headquarters of secret missions. There was a time we couldn't fall asleep without hearing the others breathing. We were different, of course, even then. But when you're young, you don't notice the ways people start to drift. Not when you're still sharing a blanket and building dreams out of Lego bricks. We were almost twins, until we weren't. It didn't happen all at once. There was no fight, no betrayal, no thunderous break, just a quiet stretching of space. He got taller before I did, grew restless, grew louder, started sneaking out at night, started wearing black, started rolling his eyes when Mom called him sweetheart. I still had Star Wars sheets on my bed when he started talking about moving out. He hated school. I tolerated it. He loved guitars. I loved books. He played loud music. I wore headphones. Somewhere between 13 and 19, we stopped sharing things. No more late-night whispers. No more trading Halloween candy. No more riding bikes until the streetlights came on. We were still brothers, still under the same roof. But we became something else too. Polite strangers with shared memories. I used to blame him for leaving. Now I'm not sure I didn't leave first, in my own quiet way. Maybe growing apart is something you don't notice until you've already arrived at separate destinations. It was a Thursday night. I remember that because I was working late, finishing slides for a meeting I don't even remember anymore. The phone lit up with his name. We hadn't spoken in 6 months, maybe more. My hand hovered over the screen, my thumb ready to swipe, but I hesitated. I told myself I'd call him back on the weekend. I didn't. I thought I had time. The next call wasn't from him. It was from a number I didn't recognize, a voice I'd never heard before, telling me he was gone. Gone, like a candle that forgot to flicker before it disappeared. They said it was fast, said he didn't suffer. But I did, because the last thing he ever said to me was left on voicemail. A message I still haven't deleted, even though I've memorized every word. Hey, just wanted to hear your voice. No reason. Call me if you feel like it. I never did. And now every silence feels like that call I didn't answer. I've been to funerals before, but never one that felt like being buried alive. Everyone said the right things. He was so full of life. He had a good heart. He's in a better place now. But no one knew him. Not really. Not like I did. Not like I should have. The service was simple. Closed casket, flowers. A photo on a small easel, younger than he really was. I stood there in my wrinkled black suit, wondering if I was mourning the man he became, or the boy I lost years ago. People came up to me, eyes soft, voices gentler than usual. You must be his brother. I nodded, but I didn't feel like his brother. Not anymore. I felt like a ghost of a bond that had once been real. There were things I wanted to say, like how he used to laugh with his whole body, or how he'd once carried me 2 miles home after I broke my ankle. But I couldn't find the words. So I just stood there, still, like grief had poured cement into my chest. And silence was the only language I remembered how to speak. It was the last room I entered. His room. The door creaked like it remembered how long it had stayed closed. Everything smelled faintly of old cologne and worn denim. I didn't plan to stay long, just grab what mattered and go. But something pulled me toward the bed. And there it was. A box. Old, wooden, scratched with time. Not locked. Not labeled. Just waiting. Inside, a chaos of memory. Our childhood toy soldiers, missing limbs but still standing. A dried flower pressed in a paperback book. A crumpled concert ticket from a show I wasn't invited to. One of Mom's old birthday cards, signed by both of us in sloppy handwriting. And beneath all that, a photo. We were 10 and 12. On bikes. Covered in mud. Laughing like we had no idea what distance even meant. I sat there, holding that photo, trying to remember the last time we laughed like that. The answer never came, but the tears did. That box didn't just hold his things. It held the pieces of us he chose to keep, even when I didn't know he still cared. It was folded 4 times, tucked behind the photo. Yellowed paper. Blue ink. No envelope. It wasn't addressed to anyone. And yet, somehow, I knew it was for me. He wrote, open quote, "I never figured out how to be the brother you needed, but I always wanted to be. I kept thinking we'd have time. Time to fix things, time to talk like we used to. Time to just sit on the porch and say nothing at all." Close quote, open quote. But time runs like water through fists, and I was always more fist than open hand. Close quote, open quote. If you ever find this, know that I tried. In my own messed up, quiet way. I chose. I didn't know I was crying until the ink began to blur. That letter felt like a door I'd been standing in front of for years. Locked, until now. He had never said those things out loud, but somehow I had always hoped he would. Now I held them in my hands. Too late. And yet, exactly when I needed them. I used to think forgiveness was a transaction. Someone says sorry, you say it's okay, done. But it's not that clean. Especially when the apology comes too late, or never comes at all. Especially when the person you need to forgive isn't around to hear it. So I went back to the cemetery. I brought the letter, and I read it out loud. To the wind, to the sky, to the space between the words we never said. Then I talked. Not in my head, not in polite silence, but with my whole voice. Cracked, messy, human. I told him I missed him, that I hated him, that I loved him, that I'm sorry too. I told him everything. And when I finished, there was no great revelation, no bolt of lightning, no voice from beyond the grave, just stillness. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel empty. It felt light. Like maybe somehow he heard me. Like maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not something you give to them, but something you give yourself. Some stories don't have perfect endings. There's no dramatic hug, no neatly tied ribbon of reconciliation, just a quiet understanding that what was lost mattered. That even if time ran out, even if the words were late, the love was always there, somewhere, waiting to be found. If you have someone you haven't spoken to in a while, someone whose name still echoes in the quiet parts of your mind, maybe this is your sign. Call them, write them, forgive them, or forgive yourself. Because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a box beneath a bed, a letter with no name, a photo worn soft from years of keeping. Sometimes it's what remains after everything else is gone. Thank you for listening to Soulful Tales. If this story touched something in you, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and if you haven't already, subscribe to hear more stories that speak to the quiet corners of the heart. Until next time, hold on to what matters, even if it's silent, especially if it's silent.